Hello, and welcome to the Homeschool Conversations Africa podcast. Here, we discuss homeschooling from the African perspective and the unique challenges that come with it.
If you're considering homeschooling, we hope to inspire you as you take this bold step. If you're already a homeschooler, we are here to share encouragement for this wonderful journey we are on to educate our children in the best way we can. We are your hosts, Jifa Andam and
Carissa Nete Mabel.
Let's dive right into today's conversation. Hello again, dear listeners, and welcome to another episode of Homeschool Conversations Africa. We are excited to have with us today another veteran homeschooler. Her name is Ghanaughn Brown. Ghanaughn runs an organization that helps homeschoolers like you and me. I'm not going to say much because that's kind of why she's here today. She's going to tell us a whole lot about her organization. So without much ado, let's welcome Ghanaughn to the show. Welcome, Ghanaughn.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm so excited to kind of do a deep dive into homeschooling, and it's just something I completely enjoy talking about. I've been homeschooling now for about 12, 13 years, and
wow,
I absolutely love it. So I love talking about it. I love opportunities to talk about it.
That's
so
awesome.
Thank you for creating this for me.
That makes two of us, so this should be fun.
Yeah.
Great. So, Ghanaughn, can you tell us a bit about your family, where you're from, all of that stuff?
Yes, awesome. So, I am a mother of 4 children. My children now are ages 15. She turns 16 soon. And then I have a 15-year-old, but he's really 14. Okay, let me just tell you the real ages. They're 15, 14, 13, and 11. Okay. Those are their real ages.
Okay,
15, 14,
nice.
13, 11. So it's back to back. At some point,
Wow.
I can say I had 4 children under 4 years old, and
Wow.
that was kind of our life. We lived in Los Angeles for a big part of our life, Los Angeles, California. And this is where our homeschool journey began, is in Los Angeles. And we moved to Nigeria for about 6 or 7 years. And we continued to homeschool while we were in Nigeria. So that's also very interesting. And then we recently relocated back to Los Angeles for the past year and a half, 2 years for my children's high school, years here. So, and we're still homeschooling our children through high school. So that's a little bit about our geographic journey and how we ended up back in LA. But the journey of homeschooling has been an interesting one. And I can share a little bit about that as well.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, so we started homeschooling when my oldest, my daughter, was about 6, and my youngest, I had 4 kids, but my other school-age son was about 5. So I say we homeschooled for about 12 years because even through the nursery years and all those years, we did a lot of homeschooling. Your kids are only in school for maybe about 2 hours here in the States, with preschool and things like that. And I was a stay-at-home mom, so there was a lot of homeschooling involved. But we officially took them out of the school system when my daughter was about to enter 2nd grade and my son was about to enter 1st. So the last school years that my children experienced traditional school was 1st grade and kindergarten.
Okay.
And it was at that point where I said, I just got to figure out something different. I didn't have a model for what that looked like. I know I was explaining to you earlier that, my husband is Nigerian. He's Igbo from Imo State. So he went to, traditionally for him, he went to boarding school. I was also an educator, which is what I hesitate at times telling families that I was an educator, because somehow I feel like it unequally qualifies me for the role of a homeschool mom.
Mm,
And it doesn't.
mm.
It actually
That's
makes
right.
things
That's a question we always get.
we always, but it makes things a lot worse. And I'll go into that later. I had a harder time homeschooling because I was so grafted into what education looked like that I couldn't figure it out on
Mm,
my own. It took me years to
mm,
figure out what homeschooling actually looks like. And so I'll go into that. So it was actually a disservice. But I was an educator. My parents were educators. My mom's a school principal. She trains other school principals and at the college level. My dad was a math and music teacher. So everything was traditional kind of around me. So I didn't have that model for
mm,
homeschooling. So
mm,
I just knew that there needed to be something else. I knew that I needed something else mentally for
mm.
my own mental health as a mom, as I stated before, for kids 4 and under, and
Yeah.
a stay-at-home mom in Los Angeles. And I qualify that by saying in Los Angeles, California, because it's a bit different being a mom here in Los Angeles than being a mom, let's say, when I was in Nigeria for 6 or 7 years. I had a lot of help.
Mm,
Um,
mm. Because I was just gonna say that isn't that, people will think, ooh, send them off to school and, have your
Mhm,
peace of mind and everything. So it's
mhm.
kind of interesting that you're saying for my mental health, I had to bring them home. And
I
everybody's
had
wondering,
to.
like, really? You wanted all four home with you?
You're
Yeah.
right. That's actually an excellent point. You're right, because school is often looked at by, some here, that it is that time that you get in the day to clean and cook, and if
Mm-hmm.
you're a stay-at-home mom and get yourself organized or whatnot, or if you have a business that you're working from home, those are the hours that you can use to do so. But I think
Yeah.
because my kids were so small, and my last child was a baby at the time, like under 1 years old. So a lot of the hard work of staying up through the night rested on me because my husband did work,
Mm-hmm.
and so now I'm up at 6 in the morning trying to get my kids ready for school, and trying to find the uniform, the shoes, and then they have to use the bathroom, and then okay, the
Yep.
lunch, and then I forgot
Mm-hmm.
something, and then I have to go back up to the. And so I would, in all vulnerability as a mom, I would find myself kind of being anxious all morning, either
Mm-hmm.
yelling or being agitated. Oh, you can't find your
Mm-hmm.
shoe. I left the clothes out. What'd you do with the clothes? Like, just really just
Yeah,
an
I can
agitated.
identify. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was not enjoying being a mom. I was not
Yeah.
enjoying parenting. I was not enjoying my mornings. And I that's not how I envisioned being a mom is like this
Mm.
with each. And so when I drop my kids off at school, I will feel so guilty because I feel like, oh my
Yelling
gosh,
at
I could be
them.
yelling all morning. And now I drop
Uh,
them off and I'm not going to get them until 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Like,
mm,
that's not how I envisioned my household. And I found myself at a place where I felt like I've got to take control of this. I got to figure out what is best for me, not necessarily what everybody's doing. It's great that it
mm,
may work for my neighbor. It's great that it may work for my cousin. It's great that it works for, Susie down the street. But I am not happy in this routine, and I'm
mm.
not going to pretend to be, because it's just not authentic, and it's going to come out one way or the other. So
Yeah.
it was at that time and at that space for my mental health, I said, okay, homeschooling, I need slower mornings. I need slower
Mm.
mornings. I've been up all night with the crying baby and nursing at that. My last child nursed until he was 2 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and I just wanted time to read books with my kids or let them sleep in, because even getting them up at 6 in the morning, it's not like they wanted to get up at 6 in the morning. It's like I
Yeah,
had to
you're
wake them up
right.
at 6 in the morning
Mm-hmm.
to get them off to school, take time to put together a healthier and better breakfast, go on a walk with my kids. Like, I felt like I just wanted to enjoy that time period and enjoy the pace that I felt like I was capable of at that
Yeah.
point
Mm.
in time in my life. So there was that with the mental health. And then the academic side of things was actually very interesting as well, because I had my kids in a really good charter school. So charter schools in California and in the states in general, but I'm going to speak specifically about California because if it varies, I want to
Mm-hmm.
make sure I'm not speaking for all charter schools. But charter schools can operate a lot like a private school.
Yeah.
They get a lot of funding, and so they often operate like a private school, but they're public. So you don't pay for charter schools,
Mm-hmm.
but they're excellent schools. And this one that I went to had, when I say excellent, I mean like they, they're hailed, HAILED, like they get a lot of praise, because
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you do need to put your child in school. And like I said, with homeschool, homeschooling is not the panacea, and we'll get to that for everybody. It's got to work for you. I do believe God can work through anything and everything. I just
Mm-hmm.
speak specifically about how it worked for me and my family. And there
Yeah.
are families that this is like the option for them, and this is what they're capable of, and this is what they see. And I do believe God can work through all of that as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so charter schools do offer that option where it feels like a private school. So that's kind of what our schools, what the type of school that we're in. So I'm saying that to say, so we encountered spaces where, like my son, let's say, for example, who was in kindergarten at the time, who was reading at like a second, third grade level. Now, I know that might sound magnanimous and huge and oh my gosh, is he a genius? No, he had a sister that knew how to read and she liked to read, and he would pick up books and he would read because she was reading. And so
Mm.
often when there's an older sibling, the younger siblings copy, what
Yeah.
the older sibling does.
Yes,
So he
that's
was
right.
more exposed. I'm not saying my kids are geniuses at all. I'm just saying he was exposed and he desired to read, and that therefore he kind of got it right. So
Mm.
but now we're in kindergarten, and it's like you want to send my child home with vocabulary words of like it and and a and
Mm.
if,
He's just
and
going to be bored.
I am like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is ridiculous. So I would talk
But
to
to be
him.
fair to them, I guess they're trying to cater
They
to
have
the whole
to.
class, right? They
Common
can't,
Core. It's
they
a Common
can't
Core curriculum.
customize it. Yeah.
Absolutely, they cannot. Well, they can, kind of. You can differentiate.
To
You
an
do have schools
extent.
where
Yes.
but they cannot ever meet you at the level of, if I were to compare it to a homeschooling situation,
Yes. Yes.
it cannot be met that way. And I think that's ultimately what I decided, because I did
Mm.
have the conversations with the teachers, and I did say, hey, look, this is way too easy. Their answer was to give him more work. And I'm
Mm.
like, that's
That's
not
not
solving
challenging.
a problem.
Mm.
When you give a kindergarten more work, who does the work really? Like who's
The
really up
parent.
all night? Exactly. Like, oh no, we are not. You're not. This is not the solution. To give
Mm.
me more work and more stuff I have to oversee. This is not the solution. So I think that was my conclusion. So I feel like I tried with the school. I tried to have the conversations, and then at some point I kind of felt like I was like a stage mom. You know what I mean? Like a
Mm.
Hollywood stage mom. Like, look what my kid can do. Like, like
Mm. Yeah.
trying to be like my kid is super special, but I am trying to say that like he can read.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So is
Yeah.
there a way that we can differentiate education for him? And mind you, I was a kindergarten teacher, so I do know what is possible. So yeah. So in regards to the decisions for homeschooling, that's kind of how it was birthed. It was birthed out of me trying to figure out as a mom, what do I need
Mm.
as a mom at this particular stage in my life, not comparing myself to anybody, but
Yeah.
just what is it that I need, and really allowing myself to be authentic about what I needed.
Mm.
Um, and be heard about what I needed, because you have to communicate. I have to communicate to your husband. You have to communicate to your people
Mm-hmm.
around you, and so really being truthful about what I needed, and then
Mm.
to academically really seeing that my kids' needs academically were not getting met
Mm.
in the school system, and it's not necessarily their fault. As you mentioned before, they have a Common Core curriculum. It's actually specifically called Common Core
Mm-hmm.
in the states that they kind of have to go by, and there's really not a lot of room for
Mm.
the de factos that are either above or below
Mm.
the level of where in which they are teaching,
Mm-hmm.
even though they do try. The best teachers do try to differentiate education,
Yeah.
and those that are unknowing, find it difficult to do so.
Mm.
And so that's at that point is kind of when I decided that there's got to be something else, and that's when I started researching what other
Mm.
options were, what
Mm.
what other options were available to me, and I kind of stumbled upon a hybrid program, which allowed my kids to go to school 2 days a week. And then I
Mm,
homeschooled 3 days a week. So it was an in-person hybrid program. So we did that for a
okay.
few years. Yeah, so we did
That's
that.
cool. Yeah, those are
hmm
neat.
Those are very neat because when they were
Like the
in
best
school,
of both worlds, huh?
yes, yes, which is exactly what we're going to transition GCLS into. That's what we're growing ourselves into to be able to do that. And
Okay.
then,
Well,
like
you
for the
just referred to GCLS, so
yes,
and our
yes,
listeners don't know what GCLS is. So can you tell us
yeah,
what
yeah.
GCLS is, what it stands for, why you decided to start it? Yes. Over.
Yes. So GCLS, it stands for Global Citizen Leadership Schools. And so our goal and our aim with the school is to train young hearts and minds to be global citizens and to
Mm,
be factors of change and agents of change right where they stand. We teach that there's no such thing as small voices, even if they're
mm,
small bodies. They have a big voice. And so a
mm,
big part of what we do is connecting real world issues and bring them forth with our students, and they learn how to solve problems. We focus on the sustainable development goals. Nigeria has their own set of sustainability development goals.
mm.
They are congruent for the most part with the UN, which is United Nations
Nation. Mm-hmm.
sustainability development goals. And so for each like learning period, we may focus on a sustainable on a SDG
G.
goal.
Mm-hmm.
So we just finished four, which was about SDG Go 4, which is about health and
Mm,
well-being, and the kids were able to create projects on how they can first of all identify a problem and then being able to solve a problem, right? So part of being
that's
a
cool.
global citizen is being able to see the problems around you and then figure
Mm-hmm.
out how to solve the problem, and communication is huge. So that's why at our school we focus on four languages. We focus on, obviously there's English, of course, but we do
Mm-hmm.
French, we do Igbo, and we do Yoruba as in languages. And
Okay.
our goal, we would love for, we encourage all the students to kind of take all of the language courses. Therefore, they can communicate across tribes and communicate their big ideas.
Mm,
We focus on
mm,
presentation skills, 21st century presentation skills. Children as young as 4 years old and 5 years old are learning to do slideshow presentations.
mm,
They're learning how to control Zoom meetings. They're learning how to take questions from a crowd. They're learning to communicate through being nervous. They dress appropriately.
mm.
And when I say these children at 5 years old are learning how to hit all the buttons in a Zoom meeting, I absolutely mean it because I still can't.
Well, they take
Like,
your phone at 2 years old and they know what
you
to do,
do.
right? So I'm not too
They
surprised.
do. Exactly. Exactly. They're all over the place in the Zoom meeting. Like, I don't think I can have a Zoom meeting unless my assistant's on a Zoom call with me. She's like my Zoom DJ, you know? But these kids are like just they're just full force, and so that's the premise of the school. We teach from a
Mm,
place of growth. We teach from a place of project-based learning. So we focus again on our SDG goal. With, like I said, we just finished four about health, and then we incorporate all of the subjects into that math. So that math, reading, writing, language, everything is kind of tied
mm.
into that
Yeah.
so that children see that learning is not isolated, that math
Yes.
isn't isolated. Math can
Mm,
be a part of solving world problems, and they can see
mm.
how numbers and figures and statistics and maps and all of these things matter, and
Come
understanding these
together.
things
Mm,
matters.
mm,
So we focus. So we focus on our SDG goals. We focus on project-based learning. Me
mm,
personally, I went to Harvard for this particular subject with global citizenship and education. So I'm able to take a lot of the lessons that I've learned there and incorporate them with global citizenship lessons at the school. We have a course specifically for global citizenship. I mean, that's how serious we are about it. So
mm,
we do integrate the topics into like the SDG goes into the learning goals for the different subjects. We also have a global citizenship class where we focus specifically on um, on the goals at hand, and the children do participate in real world projects. So, like for
mm.
health and climate, the kids are passing out sanitizers and masks and things like that. And at the beginning of COVID, the kids designed and had to predict what restaurants and going to restaurants will look like during COVID times and things like that.
Interesting.
And they designed their restaurants using math skills and things like that, and Minecraft and all of that stuff. So we try to incorporate so much into what the children are learning. And about every 6 weeks, the children have to present. So they're learning to not be nervous. They're learning to communicate. They're learning how to talk, to be heard. They're learning that that they can communicate to adults and not such a hierarchy way, right? Which I would say in African countries, specifically my experience in Nigeria, there's a stronger hierarchy between children and adults.
Absolutely.
And so learning that I have this big idea and learning how to communicate that with adults despite age is very powerful for a child to understand that they do have a voice and what they have to say is important, in that setting, right? This context, right?
Yes.
In that
Wow, that's a lot. This sounds exciting though. I love hearing about it. But I have one question for you, Ghanaughn.
Yes.
So you mentioned the languages and you mentioned Igbo and Yoruba, and we have listeners who are not all Nigerian. And so I'm just going to ask for those listeners who are wondering, because they're probably thinking, oh, okay, then this is not for us. So how's GCLS going to work for people from other African countries?
French. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that we do have French.
Okay.
As well.
Okay.
The third language. So it's French, it's Igbo, Yoruba.
Do you hope to include other languages, as GCLS grows?
Absolutely. If the interest is there. So we go by interest, right?
Okay.
So if the interest is there, let's say, even for Hausa, right? So that's something that we're venturing into once the interest is there. So if the need is presented, then absolutely we will meet. So therefore, if there's a homeschool, let's say a group of moms, and they have maybe about 10 students and they want to focus on their language, right? And Ghana, we can totally arrange that, right? And make that happen for GCLS if the interest is definitely available there. But the school did start in Nigeria with
and it's based in Lagos, right? So that makes perfect sense.
The interest is there, exactly. I mean, we had moms say, we started with Igbo, and then we had a bunch of moms saying, what about Yoruba? We're like, okay, all right, we got you, So when we have interested moms that are interested in that, then that's definitely what we do. But our electives are the language classes. We do a lot of science lab, social studies with kids. The students learn about different African tribes and African civilizations, and again, a lot of the reading, and we do plays, and we do plays through Zoom.
Okay, I was just going to ask, how did you do that? Through Zoom.
We do virtual field trips all around the world on Fridays. We have game days on Fridays. And we're also incorporating in person now. Obviously, it's more local, but like in person. So we had our an event in February that focused on our SDG goal of health. So we had students come to the Boardwalk Event Center in Victoria Island in Lagos, Nigeria. So maybe we'll do a world tour later for other African countries as well. But we are based in Lagos, so we are starting there. We have another in-person event happening in March, in Lagos, happening March, I think, April 15th, which is it's a bank holiday, I believe, on that day for Lagos, Nigeria. So therefore, we'll have about 50 students come, and so therefore, any homeschoolers are around, and for those that are interested in learning about homeschooling or what a typical homeschool day looks like, we open up the doors of the Boardwalk Event Center so that parents can experience what a full day looks like. It goes from 10 to about 3 o'clock. PM, and so we'll have another in-person event in April. And again, if the interest is there, we can totally do this in other countries as well.
Cities,
cities, definitely.
All right. Well,
there we can do that.
Good to know. So I have a couple more questions. Just looking at our time here, there's so much I want to ask you. So with the classes you offer, well, you mentioned science, and I guess science is science. Really, that's what I tell people. But I'm still gonna ask because I try to put myself in the shoes of our listeners and ask what they might want to ask. So, do you follow a particular curriculum, or is it just general that will really fit in with any curriculum? Because homeschoolers use different curricula
So
across board.
yeah, great question. So we follow the main curriculum we follow across the board is the American curriculum, which is the Common Core curriculum.
Okay.
We do have students that are a part of, GCLS that are schooling in Nigeria, but they still desire to be a part of the American curriculum because maybe they will
Okay.
transition to American high school. We also follow the British curriculum because we do have students that transition. So
Mm,
between those two, we look at the science curriculum, the science components, what do students need to learn by certain, what's the focus, and we
mm,
kind of gear our science program to that.
okay.
Typically, I would say like third, fourth graders, between third, fourth, and fifth, the science can be kind of the same in regards to the experiment, but then we'll work backwards in regards to we'll differentiate and we'll scaffold is what we call scaffold,
Mm-hmm.
SCAFFOLD. We'll
Mm-hmm.
scaffold it. So we teach to the higher level and then we'll scaffold it back for the younger years.
Okay.
So that's kind of how we approach the science. And so typically also what we'll do is we will, you know, um, those that are involved with our science program, they'll know what science experiments that we're doing ahead of time. They'll know what materials are needed
Mm-hmm.
or whatnot, and ahead of time. And typically, it's pretty simple and basic things that they
Mm-hmm.
can get from a grocery store or whatnot. And then we
Yeah.
do the experiment live on Zoom together.
Okay. Fun.
Right. And therefore, we can kind of see what everybody's doing and where everybody's at. We can have the conversations and they have their worksheets and things like that. So we do it all together via Zoom so that our classes are live. So they're virtual,
Mm.
but they're live. And then we
Okay.
record the classes for those that cannot make that time. And we put it in our Google Classroom. So we use the Google
Okay.
Classroom platform.
Okay. All
Hmm.
right. All right. Okay. And
Yeah.
that's important because someone might hear that you're based in California, and we know that's what, like, I don't know how many hours now, 9 hours, something like
Actually, we're based in
that.
Lagos, Nigeria. All of our staff, our team is in Nigeria.
Okay, so
Hmm.
yes, so it's good to know. It's good to know. So this
Yeah.
is African time, people. This
Yeah,
is
it is.
this is Lagos time, or at least if you're in any of the countries, it's just maybe 2 hours ahead or an hour or so behind. Yes, so
Yes. It's
it
West
works.
African time.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So
Yep.
which demographic, Ghanaughn, would you say that GCLS is best suited for? Is it just for homeschoolers, or can children who are in school sort of supplement with GCLS? Which group would you say?
Yeah. So the if I were to look at our demographic, most of the students are students that are who have families that are committed to homeschooling.
Okay.
And that and we work with the parents on how to create that dynamic in their household.
Mm,
So I do consultations with parents so that they can see what is possible for them because sometimes they get overwhelmed with the idea of homeschool. So
mm,
we work with them to really help get parents and families comfortable with the idea, especially during COVID time. It was we had a lot of families that really homeschooled. Um,
yeah.
Specifically homeschool because they didn't want their children going back to school and then they kind of wound up staying with us.
Mm,
um, so we do have homeschool families. So the day is structured for our homeschool family. From morning to we have physical fitness classes. We
okay.
have reading lab, writing lab. We have handwriting classes for the early learners, for the kiddos there, and then we kind of dive into our math labs and all of that stuff. So we have a lot of live classes classes that really are structured on West African time for
Okay.
homeschoolers. So our homeschool family can feel like, wow, there's a lot for my child to do all day, from like 8 in the
Okay.
morning to like
Okay.
4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening. There's
Okay.
always something for the children to do. So the day is structured for that. We
Okay.
also have electives. So electives are for families that do go to day school. Maybe they're out of school like at 1 or 2, but they
Mm,
want their children to be involved more in our language components. So our language components typically start around, let's say, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the evening times or the later afternoon
mm,
time. That
okay.
also works because we have, let's say, my children, right, that are participate in the language classes. So
Mm,
3 to 5, in West African time will be about 8 o'clock in the morning, 7, 8, 9 o'clock for children in California, right? So
mm,
you will have for the language classes, you might have more of an international demographic because in the
yeah.
morning time, the students can log on in the morning because they want their children to learn their language. You have Nigerians in the diaspora, who
Mm,
want their children to really learn the language. So
okay.
we have
Mm,
the elective component. So mainly we have children that want to homeschool. That's the largest demographic, and then we have
okay.
children that want to participate in the electives.
Mm,
Um, and then we also, it's important to note this, that we do have our live classes, but we also have a online system, an online portal that the children have access to that are fully homeschooling with us. So we have our live
okay.
classes, which is great. Our
Mm,
live classes are wonderful to get that social interaction and teacher
mm-hmm.
interaction and specific tutoring and everything that your kid needs. We also have an online portal that we use for academics as well. And that's where
Okay.
we do a lot of our testing, our metrics.
Okay.
That's where we do a lot of academic, like, hardcore stuff will be on
Mm,
our online portal. And it uses artificial intelligence. So basically, let's say, remember I was sharing with you about my son who at that time, he's 15 years old now, or 14,
mm-hmm.
but he was in kindergarten, he was reading at a second grade level. Well, the system would know that he's reading at a second grade level, and therefore then they will keep giving him work to challenge him at his level, not
Okay.
necessarily at his grade.
Mm,
Okay.
mm, mm,
And let's say my daughter, at one point, she struggled with math. I would say, let's say around grade 5 or grade 4, like she was just really struggling
mm-hmm.
with math. And so we needed to slow down on that a little bit. Well, this system will then give her what she needs with where she's at to get her up.
Okay.
So the
Mm,
system is designed to get your child up to grade level and even soar beyond that, at least 2 to 3 grade levels. I'm using grade levels as the American system, grade levels.
yeah.
Um, so you have to translate that in whatever system that you use, but we do mainly
Mm,
use the American system. A lot of things are kind of built around that.
okay.
And we found that children did not have at all an adjustment period switching from GCLS to, let's say, later on, their families did want to send them to boarding school or to London or to whatever. Their children did
Okay.
not have an adjustment period at all
Okay.
with us because they were always learning above their grade level.
That's
So they were never
great. That's
behind.
good to know. That's
Yes.
good.
We'll have to wrap up here, but we will continue this conversation in our next episode, so do join us then. Thank you for listening to the Homeschool Conversations Africa podcast.